So far, Nikki Haley has proved that there is an appetite for a non-Trump candidate. Is that trend going to continue tomorrow?
I think so. And I think what we've seen so far is that there is a significant faction of the Republican Party that doesn't want Trump to be their nominee, that wants Trump to go away. It's just that that faction has not been a majority. And we've seen it consistently now in several states. My guess is that she might do better in Vermont and Maine. She did win in D.C. But D.C. and places like that are not exactly the microcosm of the Republican primary electorate in general. And Trump has consistently shown that he has, if not a large majority, at least a narrow majority of support within the primary voters. And I assume we'll see that play out again tomorrow.
Larry, should Trump be scared? These numbers might not win Haley the nomination, but could they be enough to rob him of the White House? She said it over the weekend. Donald Trump has been in Michigan for basically running there for the last 8 years. She showed up a couple of months ago and had a really strong showing.
Well, of course it can make the difference. We don't know yet. I mean, look, where would those voters go in November? They could go to Trump, and maybe half of them will, or more than half of them, since one assumes the Republican Party affiliation would take control. But a few at least would go to President Biden. Some would go to the third party candidates. And who knows, some of them may sit at home. So there are really four options for the Haley voters. I think Trump should be concerned about it. Of course, he isn't. He assumes that his popularity is such that it would overwhelm any opposition. But that is a problem for him, whether he admits it or not.
Mark, Donald Trump is definitively running for president. And it seems like every speech he gives, he is dying to say he got rid of Roe and he is to blame for no deal at the border. I get that he's an unconventional guy and sort of grievance is what he runs on. But is this really how he thinks he can become the next president of the United States?
Well, it's how he did it the first time. He said, elect me and I'll break stuff. And he broke stuff. But that's the big question. I think fundamentally what's going to happen tomorrow is that the decks will be cleared. It'll be clear that Trump and Biden are the nominees of the major parties. That's unlikely to change, and everybody's going to be exhausted by the notion that we're going to see a rerun that nobody wants to see, which is just remarkable that in the greatest democracy in the world, we're ending up with a couple of candidates that 3/4 of the country doesn't want to see. But I think at the end of the day, Joe Biden has a good case to make, and that's good news and bad news. He's got a good story. The bad news is that he's got a good story and he's not doing well. And so how much better can he tell the story than what's already been told? But he's going to have to do a lot better. And listen, he starts off behind. The bad news for Biden and the good news for Trump is that Trump is now ahead by a larger margin in the polls than he ever has been since he started running in 2015.
McKay, Democrats are trying to downplay these new polls, but is that really the right move? Or should they be flashing them as a warning sign? If Donald Trump really is a threat to our democracy, should they be driving this home to motivate all those voters who, to Larry's point, could think about sitting on the couch in November?
Yeah, I think there's a delicate balance here, right? That Democrats want to project a certain amount of confidence and strength. They also know that, fear and true alarm at the fate of democracy is going to get their voters to turn out. But they can't keep their voters in a suspended state of panic for the next 6, 7, 8 months, right? They need to pace themselves. So I imagine that we will see some of those flashing warning signs once we get to the fall. But I think at this point, the Biden campaign is just trying to show the country that they're not in a kind of a death spiral, right? The coverage has been so bad, the fixation on his age, on his mental, abilities. I think that they are trying to calm everybody down right now and say, look, we've got a long time to go before the election. Let's not fixate too much on polls at this point.